Have you ever had someone close to you betray you in a way that shatters everything you thought you knew? Imagine finally landing your dream job, only to have your own sister take it from under your feet. The feeling of betrayal doesn't come close to describing the shock when the person you loved and trusted turned their back on you in the worst way possible. But that's just the beginning. When the tables turned, the consequences of her actions were more than she could ever have anticipated. She thought she was safe, that she had won. But what happened next left her in disbelief, and in that moment, everything changed. Growing up, my sister and I were inseparable. Our bond was stronger than most, and we did everything together. Whether it was playing dress-up in the backyard or navigating the challenges of school, we were each other's closest ally. Our parents always praised us for how well we got along, how we supported each other, and how no argument could tear us apart. But as time went on, things began to change. My sister Lily was always the more outgoing one, the one with the big dreams, the one who would talk about all the things she was going to do. I always admired her ambition, her drive to achieve something greater than what was expected. On the other hand, I was a bit more reserved, focusing on creating stability in my life. I didn't have the big, flashy dreams like Lily did, but I knew what I wanted: a career where I could help others, a job that was fulfilling and steady. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something I worked hard for. I was proud of it. After college, we both landed jobs in the same industry. I knew that Lily would be looking for bigger, better opportunities, and I always supported her, cheering her on during interviews, helping her with resumes, and listening to her when things didn't go her way. I was her sounding board, her best friend, but I never imagined that the day would come when the tables would turn and she would become the one who would betray my trust. I had always assumed that if anyone would understand the value of hard work and dedication, it would be her. We grew up in a household where my parents taught us that success wasn't about taking shortcuts, but about putting in the effort and earning what you deserved. We both had our own paths, and while they were different, I thought we could always celebrate each other's victories. Little did I know, the future held a bitter surprise, and it would come from the last person I ever expected. A few years after starting our respective jobs, I got the opportunity of a lifetime. A prestigious company offered me a position that aligned perfectly with my goals, everything I had worked for. The salary was generous, the benefits were excellent, and it was a step towards something much bigger than anything I had ever imagined. It was the culmination of years of hard work. I couldn't believe it. I was ecstatic. This was my dream job, the one I had hoped for since college. I had put in the time, gained the experience, and worked hard to get there. The moment I received that offer, I felt like my life had come full circle. But that's when things started to change. Lily, who had always been the ambitious one, had her sights set on something bigger, something more prestigious. And just a few months after my promotion, she came to me with her own plans. She wanted to take that very same job, the one I had just secured. At first I was supportive, telling her that she had all the potential to succeed. But as the days went by, things started to feel off. There was a subtle tension in the air. The competitiveness, once playful, began to feel real. Lily was persistent, almost obsessively pursuing this job that had now become mine. I didn't think much of it at first, figuring she was just looking for a career boost. But in the back of my mind, something didn't sit right. The day I came back from my first big business trip after securing the job, I received a message that shook me to the core. The text came from Lily, and I remember the exact words, even now. "I don't need you anymore." It was brief and simple, but it felt like a punch to the gut. I had just landed in the city after a long week of meetings, and here I was, reading those words. I didn't understand. We had been close. We had celebrated my new role together. So why would she say something like that? Why now? I brushed it off as something impulsive, maybe even a misunderstanding. But when I walked into my apartment, that's when the true extent of the situation hit me. Our entire life, our shared memories, everything we had worked for was gone. The furniture, the personal belongings, the pictures, everything was packed up. It was as if she had disappeared and it didn't make sense. I immediately reached out to Lily, but the calls went unanswered. Then it hit me. She had moved out, and not only that, she had taken everything we had built together. It wasn't just the physical things, the trust, the bond we had shared, had been broken in the most brutal way. She had gone behind my back, taken the position that was rightfully mine, and the worst part was that she thought I wouldn't do anything about it. At that moment, I felt both numb and enraged. How could someone I loved and trusted so much do this to me? But what hurt the most wasn't just the loss of my job. It was the betrayal, the calculated way in which she had used me to climb to the top. It was as if everything we had worked for together had been thrown away, and she had replaced me without a second thought. But one thing was certain. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. This wasn't just about a job. This was about respect, dignity, and not letting someone take advantage of you, especially when they're family. I had worked too hard for too long to let it all slip away just like that. I would fight back, and that's exactly what I did. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but I knew that this was far from over. This was just the beginning of a much bigger journey, a journey that would see her realizing the true cost of betrayal. Things had always been calm, predictable, and stable before all of this happened. Lily and I were always the best of friends, even though we were opposites in many ways. She was the loud, outgoing one, while I was the quieter, more reserved sister. But despite our differences, we had always supported each other. I always assumed she had my back, that she would never betray me, especially not in such a drastic way. We were family, after all. I had worked hard to earn the role that I had just stepped into. It wasn't just a job to me, it was the culmination of years of dedication, learning, and personal sacrifice. The late nights, the missed social events, the countless times I had pushed myself past my limits to ensure I was the best at what I did. It all paid off when I received that offer letter. The job was everything I had dreamed of. It was a turning point in my career, the moment that everything changed. But as soon as I got the offer, I didn't realize it, but things were starting to shift. The pressure began to mount, not from the job itself, but from the person closest to me. Lily had always been a go-getter, and I admired her for it. She was the one who had all the ambition, who dreamed big, and who believed that she could conquer the world. I always stood by her side, cheering her on, encouraging her to keep pushing forward. I never imagined she would want the very same thing I had worked so hard for. After all, we had different goals, and I was always the steady one while she aimed for the stars. But I guess somewhere along the way, she had decided that she wanted to take my place. At first, I didn't realize that Lily had been working behind the scenes to claim what I had earned. It started off small, little comments here and there, suggesting that she could do the job better than I could. She was always pushing for more, never satisfied with what she had, and that's what worried me. It wasn't that I didn't believe in her abilities, it was just that she was constantly trying to one-up me, and the competition between us was no longer playful. It felt real, like she was eyeing something I had worked so hard to build. There were signs, too, that she was changing. The way she spoke about her career, the way she tried to act like she was the one who deserved everything that I had worked for. It made me feel uncomfortable. She began asking me more and more about my job, how I got it, and what steps I had taken to climb the ladder. I thought it was just curiosity at first, but in hindsight, I see it was something else. She was calculating, planning, trying to find a way to push me out and take my spot. As I was becoming more immersed in my new position, Lily started to get closer to my colleagues, often striking up conversations with them about how they could help her get ahead. I began to notice subtle changes in her behavior, how she would ask questions about the company's leadership, the inner workings, and even how to present herself to the higher-ups. All of this felt like a red flag to me. Why was she so interested in the same job that I had just secured? Why was she starting to act like she could just waltz in and take over? I brushed it off at first, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid. But when I returned from that business trip, it became undeniable. The text from Lily was the first indication that things were far worse than I had imagined. "I don't need you anymore," she wrote, cold and simple. I felt the weight of those words as they stared back at me, piercing through the screen of my phone. How could she say that? What did she mean by it? The confusion and hurt flooded me in that instant, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The words lingered in my mind as I walked through the door of my apartment, not knowing what to expect. But what I walked into was nothing short of shocking. The apartment, which had once been a place of comfort, was now barren. My belongings were gone, everything from the furniture to the personal items we had shared together. It was as if she had taken it all in a calculated, deliberate way. Nothing was left behind. There was no note, no explanation, just an empty space. I could barely process it at first. My mind raced as I tried to understand what had just happened. What was Lily thinking? Had she really done this to me? The days that followed were filled with confusion and disbelief. I reached out to Lily repeatedly, trying to get some answers. But she didn't pick up the phone, and when I tried texting her, I was met with silence. The coldness of her actions began to sink in. Not only had she taken everything I had worked for, but she had also abandoned me without a second thought. I tried to think logically. Maybe she had done this out of some misguided belief that she deserved it more. But the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like this was a calculated move on her part. She was getting what she wanted, and she had thought that she could take it all without facing any consequences. She had used me to climb higher, and now that she had achieved what she wanted, she was casting me aside. I didn't know whether to feel angry, hurt, or betrayed. What I did know was that this wasn't just going to slide by. I couldn't let her walk away without consequences. It was then that I made the decision. I wasn't going to take this lying down. She had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to sit back and let her get away with it. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever imagined, but I was determined to turn the tables. This wasn't just about a job anymore. It was about respect, fairness, and reclaiming what was mine. And Lily was about to learn exactly what happens when you underestimate me. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything I had built, my job, my home, my trust in my sister, was gone, swept away in an instant. Lily's betrayal had shattered everything, and I was left standing there, alone and lost in the wreckage. But instead of crumbling, something inside me snapped. I knew I couldn't just let her get away with what she had done. It was time to take control of the situation and show her the consequences of underestimating me. For the first few days, I was paralyzed by shock. How could she do this? How could she take everything from me and walk away so easily? The hurt and confusion clouded my judgment, but in that fog of emotions, a fire started to burn. Slowly but surely, I realized that this wasn't just about the material things she had taken from me. This was about the principle of the matter. Lily had not only stolen my dream job, but had also completely disregarded our family bond and the years of trust we had built together. I knew I had to act fast. Every minute that passed, Lily was getting further away with her actions, and I couldn't let that happen. I had to take back what was rightfully mine. I had to rebuild my life, not just for me, but to prove a point that no one, especially family, could ever do this to me again. The first step was to reclaim my job. I had worked tirelessly to get to where I was, and there was no way I was going to let Lily walk into that position without earning it. So I started making calls. I reached out to my colleagues, to the higher-ups in the company, and made it clear that I wasn't giving up without a fight. At first, they were sympathetic, but it was clear that the job was no longer in my hands. Lily had already moved in and taken my place, but I didn't give up. I knew what I was capable of, and I wasn't going to let someone's careless ambition take everything from me. So I threw myself into networking, brushing up on my skills, and making sure that I had everything I needed to prove that I was the one who deserved to be in that position. I used every connection I had, every bit of knowledge, and every ounce of experience to make it clear to the company that I was the better choice. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew it was the only way forward. Behind the scenes, I also started to gather evidence of what Lily had done. I kept screenshots of our conversations, collected bank statements showing the money she had drained from our shared savings, and documented every piece of communication that had taken place. I knew that someday this would come in handy. If it took legal action to regain control of what was rightfully mine, I was ready to take it. The most important part of my plan, however, was to reclaim my emotional strength. I had spent so long focusing on the betrayal and the hurt, but now I had to focus on rebuilding myself. I started making time for my friends, my passions, and my personal goals. I set new boundaries and made sure I was living for myself, not for anyone else. This wasn't just about getting my job back or proving a point to Lily. This was about reclaiming my life and moving forward, stronger than before. But the real turning point came when I decided to confront Lily. After weeks of silence and uncertainty, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to face her, look her in the eye, and make her understand the gravity of her actions. I texted her, asking to meet up. When she agreed, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a simple conversation. This was the moment where everything changed. When we met, I was calm. I didn't let her see the pain and anger I had been carrying. I wanted her to hear me out and understand that I wasn't going to just sit back and let her walk away scot-free. I told her about the damage she had done, about how she had destroyed our relationship, our trust, and everything I had worked for. And I made it clear that I was going to get everything back. At first, she seemed genuinely sorry. She apologized for what she had done, saying that she didn't mean to hurt me. But there was something in her eyes, something that made me realize she still didn't fully understand the consequences of her actions. She thought that with a simple apology, everything would go back to normal. But it wasn't going to be that easy. It was in that moment that I realized just how much Lily had underestimated me. She thought that by taking what was mine, she could simply walk away and leave me behind. But I wasn't going to let that happen. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about teaching her a lesson she would never forget. She couldn't just walk into my life, take what she wanted, and leave without facing the consequences. And that's when I made my move. I wasn't going to beg for my job back. I wasn't going to plead for the life I had built. Instead, I was going to take action, and I was going to do it on my terms. The time for talking was over. Now it was time for her to understand that actions have consequences, especially when you betray the person who's always had your back. What happened next would change everything, and Lily would soon realize that she had made a huge mistake. The days following my confrontation with Lily were full of tension and uncertainty. I had made my intentions clear. I wasn't going to back down, and I wasn't going to let her walk away from this without feeling the consequences of her actions. But as much as I had prepared myself for what was coming next, the reality of the situation still took me by surprise. This wasn't just about getting my job back. It had become about something bigger, something that could change the course of our entire relationship. The first big shift came when I was offered the chance to return to the company under my own terms. It wasn't a simple, "you can come back and everything will be fine" situation. No, this time, the tables had turned. I had proved myself, not just to my colleagues, but also to the higher-ups who had seen my hard work and dedication. What they didn't realize was that in my absence, I had been silently working to expose Lily for what she had done. One afternoon, I received a call from the HR department. They informed me that a series of internal reviews had revealed some irregularities in Lily's conduct, especially with how she had handled the department's finances and certain company policies. My heart raced as I listened, knowing that this was the break I had been waiting for. This wasn't just about proving to the company that I was the better candidate. It was about showing Lily that her betrayal would not go unpunished. The HR representative mentioned that a thorough investigation was underway and that I had every right to be included in the process, given the circumstances. It felt like the universe was aligning in my favor, but part of me still had to hold my breath. The idea of taking Lily down, even if it was through a legal and professional route, was never something I had envisioned. But I had no choice. I had given her every chance and she had thrown it all away. Meanwhile, Lily was growing increasingly agitated. Her usual calm demeanor, the one she had so effortlessly carried throughout our lives, was now replaced with stress and tension. I could tell she knew that her time in the company was running out. I had been receiving reports from colleagues who had been silently watching her every move, and the evidence was mounting. From inappropriate financial transactions to her misleading communication with clients, Lily's actions had been anything but professional. The truth was beginning to surface, and there was no way she could hide it any longer. I didn't have to say anything to her directly. The first sign of the inevitable came when Lily was called into the HR office for a meeting. Her face, once full of confidence, now looked hollow as she walked in. She probably didn't expect the investigation to have gone this far, but once the company had started digging, there was no turning back. The evidence was too strong, and the damage she had caused couldn't be overlooked. As the investigation progressed, the company began to consider not just returning my position, but also offering me a role of greater responsibility, something I had never thought possible. They recognized the hard work I had put in, not only before Lily's betrayal, but also after it, as I continued to stay dedicated and focused. This wasn't just about winning back my job. It was about setting the record straight and showing that true dedication and integrity always win in the end. The breaking point for Lily came when she was called into the HR office one last time. The decision was final. She was being let go, effective immediately. All of the years she had spent in the company, building her reputation, had come crashing down in one swift moment. She wasn't just losing her job, she was losing her career and her credibility. The consequences of her actions were more significant than she had ever imagined. When Lily left the office, she looked like a shell of the person I had once admired. It wasn't a sense of satisfaction that filled me, but a sense of closure. The fight had been hard, and it had taken a lot out of me, but I had done it. I had taken back what was mine, not through bitterness or vengeance, but through persistence and integrity. I had fought for my place in the company, for my professional reputation, and for my self-respect. The moment that truly shook me, though, came when Lily reached out to me, asking for my help. The text read, "I know I messed up. Can you help me?" My first instinct was to ignore it. Why should I help the person who had taken everything from me? But I knew this moment was crucial. This was the turning point, the opportunity to prove that I had learned something from all of this. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a deep breath, reflecting on everything that had led to this moment. What did I want to say to her? What was the lesson here? She had made a huge mistake, but could I forgive her? Or would I let the consequences of her betrayal speak for themselves? In the end, I decided not to help her. Not in the way she expected. I knew that she needed to feel the weight of her actions. I needed her to understand that her betrayal wasn't something that could just be wiped away with a simple apology. It wasn't about holding a grudge. It was about teaching her the consequences of her choices. The lesson wasn't just for her. It was for me, too. It was a lesson in standing up for myself, in taking control of my future, and in never letting anyone walk all over me again. When Lily realized what had happened, when she saw that I had moved on, rebuilt my life, and taken back my position, she couldn't believe it. She thought she was safe, that she could walk away without consequences. But she was wrong. The truth always comes out, and the price of betrayal is higher than anyone realizes. For me, the victory wasn't about getting my job back. It was about showing Lily and myself that there's power in standing your ground no matter what. The dust had settled, but the weight of what had transpired still lingered in the air. Lily was gone, and with her departure came a strange sense of emptiness, not from losing her, but from everything that had happened. In the aftermath, I took a moment to breathe, to step back and reflect on the journey I had gone through, the personal and professional battles I had fought. But it wasn't just about getting back my job. It was about reclaiming my life, my confidence, and the respect I had earned. I'd never expected to find myself in this situation, torn between familial loyalty and professional ambition. There had been a time when Lily and I were close, sharing dreams and supporting each other through life's ups and downs. We'd been more than sisters. We had been best friends. But when she stole what was rightfully mine, that bond was shattered. It felt like betrayal, not just on a professional level, but also on a deeply personal one. I had trusted her, believed in her, and supported her in ways I didn't even fully realize until the dust settled. To see her use that trust as a stepping stone for her own gain was painful. But in the end, I realized that this experience was a lesson I had to learn. Throughout this ordeal, one important realization stood out to me. Resilience is not just about enduring hardship, but about bouncing back from it. I didn't just get my position back, I got my sense of self back. I learned that no one could take that from me, no matter how hard they tried. I understood that setbacks were a part of life, and while they might momentarily knock you down, they don't define you. It's how you respond that matters. When I walked into the office that day to reclaim my role, it wasn't out of anger or vengeance. It was about knowing my worth and ensuring that others saw it too. This wasn't a victory over Lily alone. This was a victory over the fear and doubt that had crept into my mind after she took what was mine. It was about proving to myself that I was more than capable, that I could rebuild what had been taken from me, and that I wasn't afraid to fight for what was right. But the aftermath didn't just affect my relationship with Lily, it changed the way I saw the world and my place in it. It made me realize how fragile professional and personal relationships can be. I learned that trust, while valuable, could also be easily broken. I now knew the importance of setting boundaries, of ensuring that no one, not even family, could cross a line that would cost me my dreams, my integrity, or my happiness. The decision not to help Lily after everything that had happened wasn't an easy one. It wasn't born out of hatred, but out of self-preservation. I had to be honest with myself. I couldn't be the person she turned to when she had already burned me so thoroughly. While forgiveness is a powerful thing, there's also a time when allowing someone to face the consequences of their actions is necessary for their growth, and for yours. I couldn't help her rebuild the life she had destroyed. She needed to do that on her own. She had to face the aftermath of her betrayal, just as I had to face mine. As weeks passed, I began to notice a shift in my personal life as well. I found myself reconnecting with old friends, people I hadn't spoken to in years, who reminded me of who I was before all of this started. They reminded me that I was more than just my career, more than just the job that had been taken from me. I realized that I had been so focused on rebuilding my career and showing others my worth that I had forgotten to nurture the relationships that truly mattered. I hadn't just lost trust in Lily, I had lost trust in myself to prioritize what was truly important. The lessons I learned throughout this process were invaluable. First and foremost, I understood the importance of self-worth and self-respect. The job, the career, the money, they were all important, yes, but they didn't define me. It was my integrity, my resilience, and my ability to stand up for myself that mattered most. I learned that no one had the power to take away my value, not even someone I had once loved and trusted deeply. And most importantly, I realized that no matter how hard someone tries to break you down, you have the power to rebuild, stronger than before. In the months that followed, I saw Lily in a different light. She had been dealt with by the company, but it was clear that her journey was far from over. I heard whispers from some of our colleagues who spoke of her struggles. She had lost more than just her job. She had lost the trust of many people who had once supported her. The regret in her eyes when she reached out to me was undeniable, but it was too late. She had crossed a line and there was no going back. As for me, I moved on. I took the job I had fought for, and I became a stronger, more confident version of myself. The experience had taught me the power of perseverance, of standing up for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against me. It wasn't just a career win, it was a personal triumph. I knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges, but I was no longer afraid. I had faced the ultimate betrayal, and I had survived. In fact, I had come out the other side even stronger than before. Looking back, I can't say I would have done anything differently. The pain and betrayal were real, but they led me to a place where I could rediscover who I was and what I was capable of. And in that, I found my true strength. The lesson wasn't just in reclaiming a job, it was in reclaiming myself.